So we're back from commercial break. Thanks for making all this time to spend with me.
I didn't agree to spend it with you, it was with your wife.
She is the brains of the operation. I am a bit of a fanboy of yours. I think we've gotten a relationship over the last year and a half or so, or 2 years.
You try to bust my posterior.
Well, there's that. But I've always been kind of I've always been fascinated by politics, the process, certain personalities. You know, we have a pretty extensive library at home, and there's a lot of first editions, and I always veer towards biographies, autobiographies, not so much for fiction. Mm-hmm. So one of my all-time favorites, which a lot of people just scoff at me for, was President Nixon. Mm-hmm. And you had the opportunity to spend time with President Nixon, mm-hmm. which makes it double cool. Two people I'm in awe of. So what was he like?
Well, I first met him way back when he was on Eisenhower's administration, just, didn't know him or anything. But then when he became president and ran for re-election, I worked at CREEP, the Committee for the Re-election of the President. Unfortunately, it lived up to its name, its acronym, because my brother was going to be head of the older Americans for Nixon. So I'd never worked with Danny on a campaign, and so I wanted to do that. And it was different. And then, of course, Watergate happened, and he left in disgrace. But he was a very bright. It was interesting because he was a sort of a Hamlet type character, in that he had this fatal flaw of lack of self-confidence in a way. I mean, he really thought people didn't like him, were going to come after him. But what he did with China, he established the Environmental Protection Agency. I mean, he did so much policy-wise that was so good. But, Watergate and then lying about it obviously was the fatal flaw. But when I was running for the Senate in 1990 against Bill Bradley, and we finally got Bradley to agree to 2 debates, one of which was on domestic policy and the other was it was really international and military. And I thought, I have a pretty good background in domestic, but I'm going to need to know more about military and international, and was trying to figure out who was the best person to talk to about that, and Nixon happened to be living in Saddle River at the time. And so I got in touch and I said, this is who I am, I'm running for the Senate, and I'd love to spend some time with you. And so he invited me up, and I went there and spent an hour and a half with him, and he was brilliant on taking me around the world and telling me all about the various military threats and responses to those. And so that when I had the debate with Bradley and he'd throw out a weapon system or some obscure reference to something, I knew what he was talking about, what I think shocked him no end than most of the people listening, because the bar was pretty low. If I was a woman, if I could put 2 sentences together, I was okay. But Nixon actually did a fundraiser for me. He wasn't doing any fundraisers, but he did one for me, and it was amazing, because I had people coming up long afterwards saying, that was the best fundraiser I've ever been to, because all it was, you sat down, he stood up on the stage, no podium, no chair, no nothing, and took everybody around the world on what was going on and who was running a country, where they'd come from, what had happened before, what to expect. And then Q&A, and the very last question was, because it was October, what do you think about the World Series? He went down the roster of both teams and said, well, if so-and-so's pitching well, this hitter is going to do this. I mean, it was amazing. It was really amazing. No notes, no nothing.
Yeah, and I think I'm fascinated by him a bit because of how he was able to kind of rehabilitate his image, and he was, went from a pariah to being sought out by, President Clinton and folks after that. So, on a lighter note, you've met a lot of people, heads of state, Congress, just everybody. 3 people you wish you had met.
Abraham Lincoln, which has been a little bit of a stretch for me.
I mean, you were pretty young in that Eisenhower picture. So.
I wish I'd been able to spend more time with Eisenhower. I would have loved to have really been at an age where I could have asked questions, you know.
And appreciated.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate him. But who else would I wish I had met? Probably Gandhi. Gandhi would have been fascinating to talk to.